Welcome back to T-News 9 channel, where we bring your favorite stories to life. Today, we're diving into Season 3, Chapter 1 of the thrilling novel, My Wife is a Gangster, titled The First Crack. Peace never says goodbye. It just disappears. That morning, my wife woke up earlier than usual. She didn't kiss me, didn't smile, and didn't even touch her coffee. Her entire focus was on a stack of reports. 3 families had refused to bow to her authority. Now that alone wasn't strange. In the underworld, respect is a currency that's always fluctuating. But then came the second report, and the air grew heavy. A warehouse had been burned to the ground overnight. There were no witnesses and, tragically, no survivors. Only a single chilling symbol was left behind her family's symbol, a clear act of defiance. She closed the file, the silence in the room deafening. I finally broke the tension and asked, "Is it serious?" She answered calmly, her voice steady but laced with something I couldn't quite place. War doesn't start with gunfire. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I was about to. At noon, 2 elders arrived. These were men who had watched her grow up, men who used to pat her head and predict, "You'll rule someday." But now, they stood before her with no bow, no sign of respect. One of them had the audacity to say, "You've been soft since you married." The room went ice cold. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. My wife smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, not even a polite one. It was a dangerous smile, sharp as a razor's edge. With that smile still on her face, she simply said, "Leave." They laughed. That was their biggest mistake. By sunset, one of those defiant families had lost its leader. By nightfall, another had lost its entire territory. There was no grand announcement, no public explanation. Only whispers spread like wildfire through the streets. "She's changed. She's not her father. She's worse." Later that night, she finally came to bed. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, and said softly, almost to herself, "They think peace made me weak." I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper, and asked, "Did it?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she reached under her pillow and pulled out a knife. It was sharp, clean, and ready. In that moment, I knew peace was over, and the first crack had already split our world in 2. Chapter 2. A Queen Without a Crown. Power is a funny thing. You don't lose it all at once. You lose it bit by bit when people stop believing in you. The next morning, rumors were already flooding the entire underworld. "She's too young to lead. She's too emotional. She married the wrong man." Of course, they didn't have the guts to say it to her face. Not yet, anyway. At noon, the council gathered. 12 elders, 12 seats, but only 10 were filled. 2 were conspicuously empty. There was no explanation. After a long, tense silence, one elder finally spoke up. His voice was calm, his tone seemingly respectful. "Perhaps," he said, pausing for effect, "this family needs guidance." I knew exactly what that word meant. Guidance was a nice way of saying control. My wife just listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes lowered. For a split second, I almost believed the rumors. I almost thought she was losing her grip. Then, she stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam her hand on the table. She simply looked at the elder who had spoken and asked, "Who taught you to speak before I finished thinking?" The entire room froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Another elder cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. "We are only worried about stability," she just smiled. A small, knowing smile. Then she pressed a button on the table in front of her. The large screen behind her flickered to life. It displayed photos, bank transfers, records of secret meetings. It was all their betrayal laid bare for everyone to see. One by one, faces in the room went pale. "You wanted a crown," she said calmly, her voice echoing in the silent room. So you tried to build one behind my back. Nobody dared to breathe. Then she delivered the sentence. Remove their names. That was all it took. No screaming, no threats. Just a simple, quiet order. By evening, those 2 empty seats belonged to men who no longer existed in our world. Later that night, I asked her quietly, "Does it hurt?" She stared at her hands for a long time, as if seeing them for the first time. Then she finally said, "A queen without a crown is still a queen." She leaned against me and whispered, "But today, I learned what it costs." And in that moment, I understood something truly terrifying. The war hadn't just begun. She had. Chapter 3. When they target the husband. There are countless ways to start a war. They chose the quickest one. They didn't touch her territory. They didn't challenge her authority. They didn't even dare to mention her name. Instead, they came for me. It all began on a completely ordinary afternoon. I was just leaving the office when a man bumped into me. He apologized, even smiled. 3 steps later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A new message. No number, no name. Just a photo. My blood ran cold. It was my car, parked right outside our home, but it was covered in bright red paint. Scrawled across the driver's side door were the words, "Your weakness has a name." I didn't tell her immediately. I foolishly thought I could handle this on my own. That was my first mistake. That night, she noticed the slight tremor in my hands as I tried to eat dinner. Without a word, she took my phone. She only needed one look. In an instant, the calm in the room shattered. The wooden table cracked right under her fist. The overhead lights flickered. She didn't scream, which was somehow much, much worse. "They crossed the line," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Within minutes, our home was transformed into a fortress. Guards materialized, surrounding the house. Snipers took positions on the roof. The heavy iron gates slammed shut. I managed to find my voice and said, "This is all my fault." She spun around, grabbed the collar of my shirt, and pulled me close. "No," she said, her own voice shaking with a fury I'd rarely seen. "You are not my weakness. You are my reason." Just as midnight struck, another message came through. This time, it was an address and a time, a challenge. She stared at the screen for a long, silent moment. Then, she turned to her men who were waiting on her every command. "Cancel all of my meetings for tomorrow," she ordered, her voice sharp and clear. "Prepare the cars," I had to ask. "Where are we going?" She turned to look at me, and her eyes were colder and harder than steel. "To remind them," she said, "who they just threatened." That night, the entire underworld learned a brand new, unbreakable rule: you can challenge the queen. You can test her power, but you never ever touch the man she loves.
Chapter 4. Her rules change. That night, something inside her died. It wasn't her fear. It wasn't her love. It was her mercy. We were in the back of a car, moving silently through the sleeping city. No sirens, no warnings, just a quiet, dreadful procession. She sat beside me, as calm as a frozen lake. It was an unnatural calm, and it scared me more than any outburst would have. I had to break the silence. "Are we going to talk?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't even turn her head. "There will be no talking," she said, her tone flat and final. "Talking is what I did before." When we arrived, the warehouse was a gaping mouth. Lights on, doors open. It screamed trap. A slow, chilling smile spread across her face. "Good," she whispered, almost to herself. "They're finally brave." The world exploded in gunfire. But her men, they weren't just soldiers. They were extensions of her will, moving like shadows, each movement precise, efficient, and deadly. And she stepped forward into the chaos without a single flicker of hesitation. There was no anger in her eyes, only cold, hard decisions. One of their men begged for his life. Another broke down, crying. A third made a desperate run for it. She stopped him with a single, clean shot. No wasted motion, no emotion. Afterward, the floor was a sea of red, and the air was thick with the smell of iron and finality. She turned to her men, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. No warnings, no negotiations, no second chances. It was a declaration, a new law, and they bowed their heads in understanding and obedience. The drive home was a stark contrast to the ride there. Her hands, the same hands that had just orchestrated a massacre, began to shake uncontrollably. I reached out to steady them, to offer some comfort. She flinched and pulled away. "I can't be soft," she said, her voice raw. "Not anymore." Back at our house, she locked herself in the bathroom. I stood outside the door, listening to the water run, and then I heard it. A sound I never thought I'd hear from her. A broken, gut-wrenching sob. By morning, the woman who emerged was remade. Her hair was tied back perfectly, her suit immaculate. The mask of control was firmly back in place. She walked over to me, kissed my forehead gently, and her voice was a quiet apology. "I'm sorry you had to see this version of me." Then she turned and walked out the door, ready to face her world. And in that moment, I understood everything. The woman I married, the woman who loved me, was still in there. But the queen they all feared, she had just been born. Chapter 5 of My Wife is a Gangster, titled I Learned to Lie. I used to believe honesty could fix everything. But in her world, honesty gets you killed. After that night, she stopped asking me to stay away from her life. She stopped trying to protect me from the truth. Instead, she started to watch me. She watched how I listened to conversations. She watched how I reacted to threats. And she watched how I learned to lie. My first lie was a small one. It was just a smile to a man who openly hated her. A simple handshake with someone who desperately wanted her throne. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my palms were dripping with sweat. But I smiled anyway. The man looked at me, surprised. "You're calmer than I expected," he said. I just nodded and replied, "Living with her teaches you many things." That was a lie. Or maybe it was only half the truth. Soon enough, lies became my tools. I learned which words to use and which silences to keep. I figured out which questions were traps and which ones I should never answer. At fancy dinners, I found myself drinking with her enemies. In tense meetings, I would laugh at jokes that were clearly meant to test my loyalty. Everyone thought I was harmless, and that was exactly the point. One night, she asked me quietly, her voice barely a whisper, "Are you afraid of what you're becoming?" I thought about it for a long moment before answering. "I'm afraid of failing you," I said. She didn't correct me, and her silence told me I was right. By the end of that week, a flood of crucial information reached her desk. It was a list of names, secret locations, and details of betrayals. All of it came from conversations where I had pretended to be nothing more than a harmless husband. She looked at the reports, her eyes scanning the pages. Then, she looked up at me. For a split second, a flash of pride crossed her face before she quickly hid it. "I never wanted this life for you," she said, her voice soft. I reached out and took her hand. "You didn't choose it for me," I replied. But then I corrected myself. "I chose it for you." She squeezed my hand, just once. In that single, silent moment, I finally understood. I wasn't becoming some kind of monster. I was becoming useful. And in her dangerous world, that usefulness could be the one thing that saves us both. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chapters.